In 1996, one American company released a magic pill. They promised it would kill any pain, and that addiction was almost impossible. Over the next 20 years, they sold $35 billion of it and buried more than 500,000 Americans. That is more than the United States lost in both world wars combined. And the family that pulled it off? They are still worth $11 billion. They still live in penthouses on Park Avenue, and not a single one of them has spent a single night in jail. Welcome to Berloga. Today we are dissecting the perfect crime of the 21st century. No masks, no guns, no blood on the suit, just one pill, one scientific letter, and one dynasty that first sold America a brand new disease and then sold America the cure. Pablo Escobar sold cocaine in the slums and died in a hail of bullets. The Sacklers sold opioids by prescription and built a wing at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Guess which one turned out to be more efficient? To understand how 500,000 people died from one pill, you have to go back to 1952. That year, three doctor brothers from Brooklyn, Arthur, Mortimer, and Raymond Sackler, bought a tiny outfit called Purdue Frederick. No blockbuster drugs, no lab, no science. But Arthur had one idea that would rewire the entire pharmaceutical industry. Arthur understood something deceptively simple. A pill does not sell itself. A doctor has to prescribe it. And a doctor can be bought, not with cash, but with attention. In the 50s, he created the world's first advertising agency dedicated entirely to drugs. He flooded doctors with free journals, free dinners, and studies quietly funded by the same companies that were selling the medicine. That is how he turned Valium into the first true blockbuster in pharma history. American housewives got hooked on what they cheerfully called Mother's Little Helper. Everybody laughed. It was just a calming little pill. Who could possibly die from that? His nephew Richard watched. Richard took notes. Richard grew up on the Valium playbook, and Richard was already dreaming about his own blockbuster, only 10 times bigger. Step 2. Invent the disease. Cancer was too narrow a niche. Pain, on the other hand, pain belongs to everybody. In 1996, the American Pain Society, the country's leading pain doctors association, officially declared that pain should be measured like body temperature, the fifth vital sign. On a scale from 1 to 10, if a patient says 7, the doctor is obligated to treat. By 2001, the Hospital Accreditation Board picked it up. Suddenly, every hospital bed in America had a poster above it. How is your pain today? From a happy little smiley, all the way to a tear-streaked frown. Sounds like care. In practice, it was a step-by-step instruction manual for turning a sore back into an opioid prescription. And if a patient happened to rate his pain a perfect 10 just to score a stronger dose, nobody was going to ask questions. By the way, 3/4 of the Pain Society's budget in those years was funded by pharmaceutical companies, with Purdue at the top of the list. Now for the main trick. In 1980, two obscure doctors, Jane Porter and Herschel Jick, sent a letter to the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine. 5 sentences, total. They had looked at hospital patients treated with opioids under medical supervision and noted that addiction was rare. That is it. Not a study, a note in the margins. But when Purdue got FDA approval for OxyContin in 1995, an army of marketers pulled out that scrap of paper and started quoting it like holy scripture at every training session, in every brochure, in every ad aimed at doctors. Less than 1% risk of addiction, proven by science. Researchers later went back and counted. That tiny letter had been cited more than 600 times. 72% of those citations used it as proof that opioids were safe at home, not just in a hospital. The fact that Porter and Jick had studied something completely different never bothered anybody, and if a doctor noticed his patient coming back suspiciously early for a refill, don't worry, Purdue had an answer for that too. Enter Dr. Haddix. Real person, real title, Vice President of Health Policy at Purdue Pharma. In 1989, he coined a beautiful new word, pseudo-addiction. Patient shaking, demanding more, lying about his pain? He is not actually addicted. He has pseudo-addiction, which means he simply is not getting enough medication, so increase the dose. Years later, even Haddix's own colleagues admitted there was no real research behind the term, but by then, that single word was already holding up Purdue's entire global marketing strategy. Stick around to the end. I will show you the exact email Richard Sackler wrote that cracked the whole scheme open in court. I will show you where the family hid more than $10 billion while Americans were dying, and I will show you why not a single Sackler has ever spent a night in a cell. But first, I need to show you how they actually sold this thing. From a helicopter. 1996, a hotel in Connecticut, a lavish launch party for OxyContin. Richard Sackler raises his glass and delivers the line that 23 years later, the Attorney General of Massachusetts will read out in open court. Imagine a series of natural disasters, an earthquake, a volcano, a hurricane, and then a blizzard. The launch of OxyContin will be followed by a blizzard of prescriptions so dense, so deep, and so white that you will be buried in it. That is not a metaphor about helping patients. That is a direct promise of profit. And it comes true. In 1996, OxyContin sells $48 million. By the year 2000, $1.1 billion. A 23-fold jump in 4 years. How? An army of 600 sales reps. Base salary, $55,000 a year. Bonus for prescriptions written by their doctors, up to $240,000 on top. Meet Tyler Morales, sun bear in a shiny blue suit, suitcase on wheels, a golf club in the trunk. Tyler does not just sell pills. Tyler knows exactly which doctor in the county writes the most prescriptions. He takes that doctor to the steakhouse, sends him spa gift cards, books him into educational conferences in Arizona, all-inclusive, open bar, courtesy of Purdue. By the late 90s, the top 1% of doctors were writing roughly half of all OxyContin prescriptions in the country. The company knew their names. The company had their addresses. The company was sending them Christmas cards. Back to Hank. Hank had hurt his back at a construction site. Simple workplace injury. The doctor handed him an orange bottle and told him it was safe, non-addictive. 6 months later, Hank was on 240 milligrams a day. A year later, he lost his job. His insurance refused to renew the prescription. A bottle on the street cost $30. Heroin, chemically almost the same molecule as oxycodone, cost $5. Hank chose the $5. A year after that, fentanyl pushed heroin out of the market. Fentanyl is roughly 100 times stronger, and Hank became one of the numbers in the annual CDC report. Between 1999 and 2020, more than 500,000 Americans died of opioid overdoses. In 2017 alone, 130 deaths a day, one death every 10 minutes. Mary Miller, the polar bear you saw in the very first scene, is one of millions of mothers, wives, and sisters burying somebody they loved. Her insurance company denied the claim. Cause of death? Self-inflicted. Her employer would not let her attend the funeral, company policy. And Purdue, at that exact moment, was popping champagne in Connecticut. Here's the email. 2007. The Sacklers signed their first settlement with the U.S. Department of Justice. The fine? $634 million. Sounds enormous. In reality, that was 4 months of OxyContin revenue. But the fine is not the point. The point is that starting in 2007, the family's internal correspondence becomes obsessed with one single topic. We need to prepare for future lawsuits. And they prepare, methodically, year after year. They funnel money out of Purdue and into family trusts, offshore, Jersey, Cayman Islands, Switzerland. By the time the company files for bankruptcy in 2019, $10.7 billion have walked out the door, more than the entire previous 13 years of OxyContin sales combined. While Americans were dying, the family was carefully emptying the safe. By the time Purdue finally declares bankruptcy, there is no money left on the table for the court. Just an empty company with a logo nobody wants. And a family that, on paper, is innocent, because the entity that filed for bankruptcy is not a Sackler. It is an abstract corporate entity. So what about justice? Settlement number 1, 2007, $634 million. Settlement number 2, 2020, $8 billion on paper. Beautiful number. Except Purdue is bankrupt by then. There is nobody left to actually pay it. Settlement number 3, 2025, the final one, $7.4 billion. 6.5 of those come directly from the family. 25 years of dying. Divide by 500,000 dead, less than the price of a used Honda. The family's net worth today? Still about $11 billion. They are richer than they were before the crisis began. The only thing that has ever actually been taken from them? was their name. There was a Sackler wing at the Metropolitan, at the Louvre, at the Tate, at Harvard, at Oxford, at the Guggenheim. There was. In 2018, the photographer Nan Goldin dumped a pile of empty OxyContin bottles at the steps of the Guggenheim, then at the Met, then at the Tate. One by one, the museums began quietly scraping the family name off their walls, like a dentist removing a rotten tooth. And that is it. No trial for Richard, no handcuffs, no public reckoning, a signature, a check, and they walk back to their penthouses, to their Mark Rothko paintings worth $87 million apiece. In a drug cartel, you kill for money. At Purdue, they killed for dividends. The only difference is the accounting standard. The opioid crisis did not happen because a few bad apples wandered into the orchard. It happened because the system worked exactly the way the system is supposed to work. Lobbyists write the laws. Regulators look the other way. Doctors collect educational grants from the manufacturer. Marketers turn pain into a marketplace. The patient advocacy group is funded by the same money that funded the disease, and the family quietly waits offshore until enough time passes to launder the name with a donation to some new museum. If you are thinking, that is just America, that does not happen here, walk into your nearest pharmacy. Purdue sold OxyContin in 50 countries: Germany, Canada, Israel, Australia, and the next blockbuster, for addiction, for anxiety, for loneliness, is being assembled right now by somebody else's family. The first rule of capitalism is very simple. The deadliest diseases are not the ones they treat, they are the ones they sell. This was Berloga. Take off the rose-colored glasses. Subscribe. I am going back into hibernation.